Unofficially, I'm the person who sorts the letters addressed to Santa that will never receive an answer. Most people don't realize how many of these come in. Kids still write physical letters. Parents still encourage it. Schools still make it an activity. By the time those envelopes reach us, they're already dead ends. Addresses that don't exist. Names that aren't real. Return labels written in blocky pencil handwriting. The machinery flags them automatically. They get pulled before routing and dropped into our department. We don't respond to them. We don't forward them to charities. We don't read them in full. The last part is the rule. It's been a rule since the late 90s, according to my supervisor. Long before I started. Long before she did. The explanation they give during training is simple and rehearsed. Children sometimes write about personal matters in their letters, family issues, home situations. It's not our place to read private information that was not meant for us. So we skim. We confirm it's addressed to Santa, stamp it as no response, log it, and file it away. You're allowed to read the opening line, maybe two. You're not allowed to finish it, ever. People joke about it the first year. They think it's superstition, or some old HR leftover nobody bothered to remove. Somebody always asks what happens if you do finish one. The supervisor never answers directly. She just says it results in immediate termination. I believed that was all it meant for a long time. I stopped finding the rule funny 3 Christmases ago. That's when I learned what happens after termination. It's a tight-knit secret among the people who get roped into it, and you're only told after everyone thinks you won't say anything to anyone. They don't escort you out with security. They don't make a scene. You're just told to gather your things and leave the building. Your credentials are deactivated sometime later that day. Your access to internal systems disappears. To everyone else, it looks like you quit or got fired for something mundane. What happens next isn't in any handbook. It starts the same way every time. Within a day or two, the person mentions they feel watched. Maybe they laugh it off at first and blame stress. Then they describe something taller than it should be, standing too far away to make sense. A shape, a silhouette that doesn't move when they move. By the 4th or 5th day, they stop laughing. They all describe it the same way. A black figure, at least 12 feet tall, proportioned wrong, hands stretched to its shins, standing upright, like it's pretending to be human. It wears a Santa hat, a real one, red, white trim, cheap felt. The hat never changes, it never falls, it never reacts to weather. It doesn't chase them, it doesn't speak. Every day, it's a little closer. It can stand across the street wouldn't be enough, and hurting animals always felt too small now that he understood what Santa really wanted. It listed sins like chores. It ended by asking what Santa wanted next, because Christmas was coming and he wanted to be a good boy. I don't remember putting the letter down. I only remember my supervisor standing behind me, telling me to hand over my badge. She didn't argue, she didn't yell. She looked tired, like she'd seen this exact situation before and hated it every time. She told me I was terminated for violating confidentiality policy and that I needed to leave the building immediately. She didn't warn me about anything else. I didn't leave work right away. I sat in my car in the parking lot for almost an hour with the letter in my lap. I kept expecting someone to knock on the window and tell me this had gone far enough, that whatever point that they were trying to make had landed and I could come back inside. No one did. People clocked out as time went on, walked past my car without looking twice. I drove to my brother's house because there wasn't anywhere else it made sense to go. He answered the door with his son still awake behind him, cartoon voices echoing down the hallway. The normalcy of it made what I was holding feel obscene, like I'd brought something diseased into a clean room. I asked if we could talk privately. He hesitated, then stepped outside with me, shutting the door behind him. "Why are you holding Luca's letter?" We were standing on the porch. The light above us flickered every few seconds. I hadn't noticed it doing that before. "It came to my work," I said. "I need you to read it." "You opened my kid's mail." "Yes, but you'll understand why when you open it." That made it worse somehow. He took the envelope from my hand and turned it over, frowning at the wax seal. "What is this? Some kind of joke?" "Seriously, read it." He broke the seal with his thumb and started scanning the page. I watched his eyes move line by line. When he stopped, he stared at the paper like he'd lost his place. "This isn't funny," he said. "I know." He folded the letter once. "Did you write this shit?" "No." "Did you put him up to this?" "No." "You can't really expect me to believe this came from a real..." He stopped himself, laughed once, sharp and humorless. "You can't be serious, Matt. I got fired today. I wouldn't risk my job for something like this." "That doesn't help." I tried not to read it. I wasn't supposed to. But when I saw his name... "You're talking about rules again," he said. "That stupid Santa rule you always go on about this time of year." "It's not stupid," I said. "It's a thing for a reason." "So now my son is the reason." His voice was louder now. Behind him, the TV laughed on cue. "You think my own son is fucking hurting people?" "No," I said quickly. "I think something is asking him to." He stared at me, waiting for a grin that didn't come. "You're fucking sick, man," he said, finally, after staring daggers at me. "It's been happening to other people, co-workers. Once you finished one of the letters I took, this is enough. You don't get to come into my house and say ridiculous shit like this. Just listen to me, just for once, can you? You need help, Matt, seriously. You're fucking crazy. There's a thing." My voice dropped without me meaning to. "It starts watching you, Dole. Where's the Santa hat? 12 days and then... Get out. Don't talk about my son like that. Don't talk to me unless you get your shit together." "I'm not talking about him," I said. "I'm talking about what's coming." He opened the door behind him. "Stay out of my fucking house and don't come back until you can admit you made this up. But Christmas, don't," he said. "Don't bring that bullshit into my home." I stepped at something on the TV. In the silence that followed, the flickering porch light finally went out. At the end of the street, something tall stood perfectly still, waiting. I left my brother's house, not taking my eyes off it. When I got home, it stood across the street from my apartment, partially hidden by a lamppost that only reached its upper thigh. The Santa hat sat perfectly on its head, bright red against a body that swallowed light instead of reflecting it. I didn't see it move. I watched from my living room window until my eyes started to hurt, until my reflection layered itself over the dark glass. It made me doubt the shape even existed. When I looked away and looked back again, it was still at the end of the street, standing just past the stop sign. Cars drove past it without slowing. Headlights cut through its legs and came out the other side unchanged. A woman jogged directly through the space it occupied, earbuds in, breath fogging in the cold air. She never noticed the height of the thing she'd passed. That night, I didn't close the curtains. I wanted to know if it would approach while I slept, if it only moved when I wasn't looking. It didn't move. The Santa hat was the brightest thing on the street. On the second day, it was closer. It stood across from my building, beneath a street lamp. The light didn't reveal anything, only traced its outline, like something pasted onto the world. I left early, before sunrise, telling myself that if I passed it quickly enough, I could prove it couldn't interact with me. As I walked by, I felt pressure behind my eyes, like I was remembering something I'd forgotten. It lasted less than a second. When I turned, it was still behind me. That night, I dreamed of red wax softening in my hands. On the third day, it was in the parking lot. It stood between my car and the exit. I walked around it without stopping. I remember feeling angry more than afraid. Angry that it was allowed to exist like this, violating the basic rules of proximity and consequence. A man leaned against my car to tie a shoe. His shoulder passed through his leg without comment. For a moment, by habit, I drove toward the post office before remembering I no longer worked there. On the fourth day, it began appearing indoors. I saw it at the end of the frozen food aisle, its head nearly brushing the hanging signs. People pushed carts through it. A child ran past me laughing when the cold air hit their face. I left my groceries and walked out. That night, Christmas music started to feel like a warning. On the fifth day, it followed me to my brother's street. It stood on the sidewalk in front of his porch, feet almost touching the step. I watched my brother walk through that space later, holding his son's hand, not slowing, not noticing. The porch light turned on. The thing didn't leave. On the sixth day, I stopped trying to explain. I called the non-emergency line, a therapist, anyone who might give this a shape that wasn't fatal. I talked about stress, unemployment, anxiety. Everyone heard exactly what they needed to hear. That night, it stood at the edge of my building's lot, closer than before. I closed the curtains for the first time and still woke up convinced. Something brushed the walls. On the seventh day, I was in the elevator to my apartment. The door is open. few feet in front of me now.